while we had several pieces dealing with anger, sadness, denial, and cruelty, but nothing matches the destructive power of jealousy, which was admirably portrayed by that envious character of Antonio Salieri in that superb play, Amadeus, by Peter Shepard. Salieri spends half his life plotting the downfall of his nemesis, the brilliant composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
At the end of the play, Salieri is 70 years old. The many years spent in jealous rages have taken their toll.
Antonio Salieri, a vostro servizio. Let me tell you something about my life. My parents were provincial subjects of the Austrian Empire, and perfectly happy to be so. Lombardy merchant and his Lombardy wife. Their notion of place was the tiny Italian town of Legnago, which I could not wait to leave. All they required of God was to protect commerce and keep them forever unnoticed, preserved in mediocrity. My own requirements were very different. I wanted fame. Not to deceive you, I wanted to blaze like a comet across the firmament of Europe. But only in one especial way, in music, absolute music. A note of music is either right or wrong, absolutely. Not even time can alter that. Music is God's art. Already when I was 10, a spray of sounding notes would make me dizzy almost to falling. At 12, I was humming my arias and anthems to the Lord. My one desire was to join all the composers who had celebrated God's glory through the long Italian past. I saw him every Sunday in church, painted on the flaking plaster. The night before I left Legnago forever, I went to see him and made a bargain with him. Signore, let me be a composer. Grant me sufficient fame to enjoy it, and in return I will live my life with virtue. I will strive to better the lot of my fellow men, and I will honor you with march music all the days of my life. As I said, Amen, I saw his eyes flare.
Bene! Go forth, Antonio. Serve me and mankind, and you will be blessed.
I am your servant for life. The very next day, an old family friend suddenly appeared out of the blue, took me off to Vienna, and paid for me to study music. Shortly afterwards, I met the emperor, who favored me and was to advance my career beyond all expectations. Clearly, my bargain had been accepted. The same year I left Italy, a young prodigy was touring Europe. A miraculous virtuoso, aged 10 years. His name is Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
The place is Vienna. The year is 1781. I am already a prolific composer to the Habsburg court and the most successful musician in this city of musicians. Then, suddenly, without warning, Mozart. I'd known of him for years, of course. Tales of his prowess were told all over Europe. They say he wrote his first symphony at 4, his first concerto at 5, a whole opera at 14. How old is he now? 25. I heard that he was to be at the Baroness Waldstephen's one night to conduct some of his music. So, to the Baroness Waldstephen's I went. That night was to change my life forever. I entered first the library to take a little refreshment. My generous hostess would always put out the most delicious confections in that room whenever she knew that I was coming. Most especially a miraculous crema al mascarpone, which is simply cream cheese mixed with granulated sugar and suffused with rum. It is totally irresistible. I have just sat down to consume this paradisial dish when, right away, the concert began. Some serenade. I heard it through the door. At first, only vaguely, but presently the sound insisted. A solemn adagio in E flat. It started simply enough, just a pulse in the lowest registers, bassoons and classicals, like a rusty squeeze box. It would have been comic, except for the slowness which gave it instead a sort of serenity. And then, suddenly, high above it sounded a single note on the oboe. It hung there, unwavering, piercing me through until breath could hold it no longer, and a clarinet withdrew it out of me and sweetened it into a phrase of such delight it had me trembling. The lights flickered in the room, my eyes clouded. The squeeze box groaned louder and louder, and over it the higher instruments wailed and warbled, sending long lines of sound around me, long lines of pain around me. Ah, the pain such as I had never known it. But the squeeze box went on, and the pain cut deeper and deeper into my shaking head until suddenly I was running, dashing through the side door, stumbling down the stairs, out into the street, into the cold night air, gasping for life.
Dimly the music sounded from the salon above. Dimly the stars shone on the empty street, and I was suddenly frightened. It seemed to me that I had heard a voice of God. Was it then, so early, that I began to have thoughts of murder? Of course not. In reality, the man was in no danger at all. Not yet. I buried myself in my work. More pupils till there were 30 and 40. More committees to help other musicians. More motets and anthems to God's glory. As for Mozart, I avoided meeting him, and instead sent out for whatever scores of his could be found. 6 forte piano sonatas composed in Mannheim, 2 in Munich, a Parisian symphony. They were all clever, very clever. A divertimento in D, a Cassazione in G, a grand litany in E flat. It was said that these were his original scores, first and only drafts of the music. And yet they looked like fair copies. It was puzzling. And then alarming. What was evident was that Mozart was simply transcribing music completely finished in his own head. And finished like most music is never finished. Displace one note, and there would be diminishment. Displace one phrase, and the structure would fall. Here again, only now in abundance, were the same sounds I'd heard in the library. The same crushed harmonies, the same glancing collisions, the same agonizing delights. The truth was clear. That serenade had been no accident. I was staring from the cage at those meticulous ink strokes and an absolute beauty. Capisco. I know my fate. Now, for the first time, I felt my emptiness, as Adam felt his nakedness. That night, at an inn somewhere in the city, stood a giggling child who would put down on paper casual notes which turned my most considered ones into lifeless scratches. Grazie, signore. Grazie. E grazie ancora. That dreadful night of the manuscripts, my life acquired a terrible and thrilling purpose. The blocking of God in one of his purest manifestations. I had the power. God needed Mozart to let himself into the world, and Mozart needed me to get him worldly advancement. And so, it would be a battle to the end, and Mozart was to be the battleground.
Could I not have stopped my war? Could I not have shown him some pity? Oh yes, my friends, at any time, if he above had shown me one drop of it. But I heard my music, calmed in convention, not one breath of spirit to lift it off the shallows, and I heard Mozart's music singing through it, unstoppable to my ears alone. I had to end it. But how? There was only one way. Starvation. Reduce the man to destitution and starve out the god. It was easily done. Mozart had no money and little prospect of any. I could see to that. Like many men wishing to be thought generous, the Emperor Joseph was in fact quintessentially me. When he wished to appoint Mozart as chamber composer to succeed Gluck, who had died, I suggested, grant him Gluck's position, Your Majesty, but not his salary. That would not be right. Gluck got 2,000 florins a year. Give Mozart 200. Light payment, yes, but for light duties. Perfectly fair, said His Majesty. I'm obliged to you, court composer. I regret that I could not do more. I met Mozart next at the opera. Strange pair. First Kapellmeister, sleek as a cat, and poor, demented Mozart, drunk on cheap wine, which was now his constant habit. He told me that he was having dreams, bad dreams, always the same one. A figure came to him, clad in grey, doing this, beckoning. It had no face, just grey like a mask. What could it mean? I was told that he sat all day and night at his window, writing like a man possessed, springing up at every moment, staring down wildly at the street as if expecting something or someone. Who did he look for? A figure in grey, masked and sorrowing, come to take him away. I knew what he was doing alone in that room. He was writing a requiem mass for himself. And now, my friends, I confess the wickedest thing I did to him. I got me a mask of grey, yes, and a cloak of grey, yes, and appeared myself to the demented creature as the messenger of God. I confess that in November 1791, I, Antonio Salieri, then as now first Kapellmeister to the Empire, walked the empty streets of Vienna in the freezing moonlight for 7 nights on end. And that each night, precisely as the clocks of the city struck 1, I would halt beneath Mozart's window and become his more terrible clock. Each night I showed him 1 day less and stalked away. Each night, figure in the glass became ever more crazed, until finally, with no days left to him, horror. I arrived as usual, all dead, and instead of fingers reached up beseechingly as the figure of his dreams. Come, come, come! He stood swaying as if he would faint off into death. And then suddenly, incredibly, he realized all his little strength and in a clear voice called down to me the words of his opera Don Giovanni inviting the statue to dinner. Oh, statua gentilissima, venite, venite, a cena! For a long moment, one terrified man looked at another, and then, unbelievably, I found myself nodding, just as in the opera, starting to move across the street, pushing down the latch of his door, tramping up the stairs with stone feet. There was no stopping it. I was in his dream. He said, "It's not finished. Not nearly. Forgive me. Give me 1 month more and it'll be done. I swear it. God can't want it unfinished. Look, see what I've done. Here's the Kyrie. That's finished. Take that to him. He'll see that it's not unworthy. Grant me time, I beg you." I took the music from him and I tore it into little shreds. And I held up a piece of the music like a communion wafer, put it in my mouth and swallowed it. I eat what God gives me, dose after dose for all of life. He is poison. We are both poisoned, Amadeus. I with you, and you with me. Listen to Antonio Salieri. 10 years of my hate have poisoned you, Amadeus, have poisoned you to death. You are calling to God? Yeah. God does not help you. God does not help. God does not love you, Amadeus. God does not love. He can only use. He cares nothing for who he uses, nothing for who he denies. You are no further use to him. You are too weak, too sick. He has finished with you. All you can do now, Amadeus, is die. Die, Amadeus, die! I beg you, die! Leave me alone! Leave me alone at last! The death certificate said kidney failure, hastened by exposure to cold. A generous lord paid for a pauper's funeral, 20 other corpses, an unmarked lime pit. What did I feel? Relief, of course, I confess it. And pity too, for the man I helped to destroy. And so I remained in Vienna, city of musicians, reverenced by all. Slowly I came to understand the nature of God's punishment. What had I prayed for alone in that church as a boy? Was it not fame? Well, now I had fame. I was to become, quite simply, the most famous musician in Europe. I was to be bricked up in fame, buried in fame, embalmed in fame. and all for work I knew to be absolutely worthless. This was my sentence. I must endure 30 years of being called distinguished by people incapable of distinguishing. And then, finally, God's masterstroke. When my nose had been rubbed in fame almost to vomiting, it would all be taken away from me. Every scrap. I must survive to see myself become extinct. Mozart's music sounded louder and louder to the world, and mine faded completely until no one played it at all. Shikari. I was born a pair of ears and nothing else. It is only through hearing music that I know that God exists. Only through writing music that I could worship. This was denied me. And with it, all meaning. I go now to become a ghost myself. I will stand in the shadows when you come here to this earth, and when you feel the dreadful bite of your failures, and hear the daunting of an unachievable, uncaring God, I will whisper my name to you. Salieri, patron saint of mediocrities. And in the depths of your downcastness, you can pray to me, and I will forgive you. Vi saluto. Mediocrities everywhere, now and to come, I absolve you all. Amen. All that heavy drama. Time to lighten things up now and finish with something completely different. Stephen, you have to weave your magic and turn me into a proper lady of the end of the 19th century. The kind that Oscar Wilde wrote about. The uppermost of the classes. Those lords and ladies who inhabited a rarefied atmosphere, and even their equivalents today would hardly recognize. They spoke a sort of upper-class nonsense, which we can only assume was as amusing to the average theatregoers then as it is to us today. Stephen? must give me that over-the-top look which that famous actress Dame Edith Evans had when she portrayed this grandest of paradise. Lady Bracknell was probably Wilde's most famous character. Stephen, I intend to not only try to perpetuate Edith Evans' extraordinary characterization of this character, but if possible, to take it to an even higher level, when the heroine of our version of this drama will turn out to be not at all what she at first appears to be, as we are about to reveal.
This is Lady Bracknell, as you've never seen her before. Loosely based upon the importance of being Ernest Wilde's very last play, a play that has such a confusion of relationships that the average audience member usually can't remember by the play's end exactly who is what relation to whom. But it matters not, because in this little sketch, all you'll need to know is at the end of Wilde's play, Lady Bracknell comes into the conservatory to relate everything that has just transpired.
Stephen, quickly, help me with a crowning touch. Ta-da!
With apologies to Oscar Wilde.
I must apologize if I appear to be a trifle flustered, but I've just come from the most bewildering turn of events in the drawing room. My daughter, Gwendolen, has just informed me that she's undertaken to become engaged to a Mr. Jack Worthing, a relationship of which hitherto I was previously entirely unaware. I firmly told her that she was not engaged to anyone without my permission, and that when she does become engaged to someone, it is I who will inform her of the fact. An engagement should come upon a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she should be allowed to arrange for herself. I felt bound to tell her that Mr. Worthing was not down on my list of eligible young men, but I told him that I would be quite prepared to